So I'm recording to my machine. Okay, so I'm going to send it in the group that the cloud is full. Okay, so they will empty that something and they will give you the access. But I'm not sure whether how to upload in the Zoom if it is saved in the desktop. Right, fine. See, these all the questions. First, what you have to do is go with each module, spend at least 1 day for each module, then do the practicing of each module. Then you're going to achieve that. Don't go directly, okay, something I know, but I can clear the interview. Yes, that is a self confidence, right? But what I suggest is don't go like go with full preparation, module 1, module 2. So we can have two session also, like I can spend 30 minutes for one interview, 30 minutes for one other interview, so that is not a problem. But if I'm not available, definitely it's not my bucket actually, but still I'm helping you guys, right? Fine. So last week we discussed about the app services. So what exactly app services does? So can I make my app services as a front-end web application to the public? What is the intention to create app services? For example, some cases where the organization does not require anything to own the infrastructure, correct? So what we do, we go with the serverless architecture. That means, so Azure gives you a beautiful PaaS services called platform as a services. So one of the service we have discussed is app service plan. So before you do anything, you need to have a plan. You need to plan for the hardware. Once you plan for the hardware, then you have to bring your code, right? Once you bring the code, you deploy the code and you can do the CI/CD process. That means you can do what is that? Continuous integration, continuous deployment, and your application will never go down because you do whatever it is on the staging slots, right? Staging slots plays a major role in terms of your app service plan. Now today we are going to discuss about something called as container. So this is a very light module, container instances. See, for example, what this container does. Anybody knows what is container? You might have heard, right?
It just to store the data files. It's
No,
like a container. Hmm?
that is your storage. So this is a little different. This is to run a container. Container is nothing but your small application. So whatever you run your container, right? Basically, you can run a container without managing your virtual machine. For example, in your on-premises, you might have heard about Docker. Have you heard about Docker?
It is just application which we can run the all type of application which is supported to all the development software.
Okay. So same thing in the Azure, what we do is we're going to use the container. On top of container, we're going to implement our application. Like we have installed our app services, right? Same thing, we are going to use the instances here. But only thing is this is lightweight. That means it is not like app services. App services, you have a deployment slots, you have your something called as auto scaling, other stuff in the app services. But this is very light, right? It will be very light, right? So, but here, see, in on-premises, what you have to do is, for example, in the on-premises example of your container is, so what we do, we have a physical or a virtual server. So what we do in that server, we are going to install the OS. So what is the OS? Let's say it's a Linux OS. Take an example of Linux server. So on top of Linux server, what we're going to do is we're going to install something called as Docker. So once we install the Docker, then we are going to pull the Docker images, pull the Docker images. So where the Docker images stores? Have you heard about Docker Hub? So it is going to pull from the Docker Hub. And you're going to implement your, on top of your Docker, you can implement your application. So you might have heard about Docker Hub. Docker Hub. Have you heard about Docker Hub, guys?
No.
So here, if I want something, for example, I want, let's say, for example, you can just search later. You can explore more thing on this. But when it comes to, say, let's say I want an Nginx. So someone is updated 3 days ago. So the moment I click here, it's a web server. If I want to implement this on my on-premises, what I do is I'm going to pull the images by using the command in the on-premises. So I'm going to use the command pull, right? Pull the images from the Docker Hub. But when it comes to Azure, I don't want anything this like Linux server because that is a PaaS services. This is my on-premises. And here, what I do in the Azure, I'm going to create a container instances. So when I'm creating a container instances, and I'm going to mention that, let's say Nginx only, example. So when I'm enabling this Nginx, indirectly, it will go to the Docker Hub, it will pull the images. But here, I don't require an underlying hardware or underlying virtual machine. So without provisioning virtual machine. VM is nothing but virtual machine. Make sense, guys? So here Azure gives you a container instances. It is very lightweight. That means when it comes to container, Azure, we call it as container instances. Do not get, I'm going to say, don't get confused on the services. We call it as ACI. So wherever you see ACI, that is nothing but your container instances, right? So it is nothing but it will let you run a container. Container is nothing but what? Application. Okay. In Azure without managing your virtual machine. Virtual machines and without a high level services. That means, see, it is not like your app service plan where you need to plan for your deployment slot, your something like nothing required here. You don't require a deployment slot. You don't, because this is a small lightweight, right? It's very lightweight. So see, let's take an example, a scenario for container. ACI. So it's like Azure container instances. I'm just giving a scenario. So when I can use my container instances. So here, let's say you're working for online clothing. Let's take an example, guys. Online clothing retailer. So you work for a online clothing retailer. Retailer spelling is what? Retailer. Okay. So using containers. Let's say you're using containers for your internal applications, internal apps. So let's say these apps are hosted in on-premises, in Azure, and let's say in other cloud provider. Take an example in other cloud provider. It can be AWS, it can be GCP, right? So now the hardware, the what we say application can share the hardware resources, but should not access resources used by other apps. So what company is doing here, the company always rely on to deploy, you can manage and size and scale these containers. So remember, you work for a online clothing retailer using your container for internal applications. So these applications may be hosted in the Azure or any other on-premises, right? And should not access resources used by the other apps. Now here, when it comes to container, so first thing you should know what is the comparison between your container and virtual machine. What is the difference between container and a virtual machine? So virtual machine, basically it will take full OS, right? So see, the moment you install a OS, it will take complete OS. But container is not like that. Container will take only a portion of your OS. Let me go back to the PPT. This is the difference. What is the comparison your container and your virtual machine? So container is not a storage. So when they're talking about Azure container, then Azure storage container. If you say containers only, then it is a ACI. That's called Azure Container Instance. So when it comes to your container versus your virtual machine, you can see here in the diagram itself, I need to have a server, host OS, and on top of that, I will have hypervisor and I can have my virtual machines. But here, I'll have a Docker engine. The moment I install a OS, and on top of that, I'm going to install the Docker engine. And on the engine, it will go for a container. Correct? So here, if you see, the virtual machine is taking complete OS here. Because on top of the hypervisor, I'm going to install the virtual machine. See, in the real time, in the Azure also, when you're implementing your, what we say, operating system, right, our virtual machine, in the back end, it is on the top of the hypervisor only, right? So we will not take care of the hypervisor. It is taken care by Microsoft, right? But on that, you're going to install your machine, right? And what is this actually? So the moment you have your isolation, what is it? Isolation. Guys, before that, please mark your attendance. Mark your attendance so that you have attendance link, right? The same link what we use. Please use that. Please mark your attendance. So when it
To
comes
test your data protection.
Huh?
Data protection should be put.
Yeah, data protection you can put. Data protection and monitoring.
Okay.
So it has isolation, it has operating system, deployment, persistent storage, and fault tolerance. But when it comes to your isolation, so let me give some example of container and your virtual machine. This is my container. It's called ACI and virtual machine. So first is it's an isolation. Isolation can be both environment. So when it comes to your container, it is typically a lightweight. It provides lightweight because what happens in the container, it will take a portion of your operating system, right? So it is a lightweight from the host and other containers. It is very lightweight. Have you seen in the shipyard, guys? So have you seen the containers, big containers in the shipyard? So they will arrange in a such a way that it will be very compact. it will be huge only containers, but they will arrange in a light way that, okay, this is the systematically arranged. Have you seen in the shipyard, guys, the containers?
Yes.
Same, similar to that. So they will arrange in a small, in a systematic way, and it looks very good, right? It in a systematic, it's a lightweight. So same thing in the Azure, it is a lightweight from the host and other containers. But only thing is, it does not provide a strong security boundaries. It's very simple. If you see the lab, you can see one is like your virtual machine. But when it comes to your virtual machine, when it comes to an isolation, this will provide complete isolation. It provides complete isolation, but that means it will take complete OS, right? From the OS, it will take complete OS, right? So when it comes to your hypervisor on top of that, it will take the complete OS. So that means this is useful, a strong security. Strong security boundary is very crucial here in terms of your virtual machine is crucial, right? Or critical, such as hosting applications, like hosting applications. But when it comes to your isolation, second is, yeah, Neeraj, tell me.
So I have a question like where container actually run like is it on some machine or like, where is it?
What?
Sorry, I mean I missed that part where container already actually runs.
Oh, your voice is very, very low.
Okay. So what I was asking is like where container already actually run. Am I audible?
See, I've given example in the on-premises, right? You have a on-premises, you have a Docker. Docker is nothing but your container. You have to install the Docker, then pull the images. Here, without provisioning your virtual machine, you're going to create a Azure container instances. On top of that, you're going to install the application.
Okay, got it.
Right. See, in the on-premises, you have to have a Linux server. Right. Here, you don't require to provision a virtual machine because you're going to install images on the top of the container. But it is very lightweight. So the moment you install the Nginx, you get something called as, what do you get here? You get an IP address 102, 60, 58, 48, 36. Like this, you'll get an IP address, public IP address. The moment you go to the browser, enter that, you'll get an Nginx page. Right. It's very lightweight, very lightweight.
Okay.
So when it comes to operating system, that's what I mentioned. When it comes to operating system, when it comes to your container, it will take a portion of, just a portion. It may be 5% if I'm not wrong. So it will runs the user mode, a portion of an operating system. Right? But when it comes to your virtual machine, runs a complete OS. Including what? Including a kernel, correct? Have you heard about kernel and all?
Yeah.
Okay. So including kernel, maybe CPU, memory, not maybe, it uses and storage. It takes complete charges, but here it will just take a portion of your OS. That's why it is lightweight. And it when it comes to your deployment, so you might have heard about the Docker, which I mentioned, right? So deployment, it comes here is deploy individual container by using Docker via command line. So in the on-premise, what we do, we install a Docker. We use a command line to pull the images, and even you can deploy multiple containers. I'll show you that how we can implement the container by using an orchestrator. You might have heard about Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Kubernetes is a full orchestration, but unfortunately they removed that. But when it comes to remote means, they moved a standalone course, right? Kubernetes to learn it is always it takes 3 months, right? So they moved to standalone course. But when it comes to deployment, you can deploy individual containers by using a Docker line command, right? But when it comes to your virtual machine, this will deploy individual VMs using your, you might have heard about admin center, Windows admin center, or you might have heard about Hyper-V manager, right? So you can deploy multiple VMs. On top of your Hyper-V manager, you can deploy multiple VMs by using you can use PowerShell. This is all your advanced level. Later on, System Center, you can use System Center Virtual Manager, right? When it comes to persistent storage, persistent storage. So here you may use something called as Azure Disk. Use Azure Disk. You will use Azure Disks for local storage for a single node. Node is nothing but your virtual machine, guys, in the ACI. But you are not going to see the node. You will not have the control on the node because that will be taken care by Microsoft, right? So you can, or you can have your Azure files also. Azure file, what is the advantage of Azure file? You can use as a network drive. That's called your SMB shares. Correct? But here, when it comes to persistent storage, in terms of your virtual machine, I might have told you guys, in terms of your virtual machines, it uses what? In the on-premises, we use ISO. But in virtual machine, what we use? What, guys? I've told you this one when we are discussing about virtual machines.
Image, we use image, right?
So it uses something called as VSD. That's called what? Virtual hard disk.
Acha, okay.
Like your on-premises physical disk, right? For local storage here. Right? And also, this is for an individual VM. Correct? Or it will use something called as SMB share file or file share. Right? For storages. For multiple virtual machines. So for example, if I want to debug software, what I do, I'll use file share, keep all that in the file share, then I'll map it into multiple virtual machines to access that, right? And when it comes to fault tolerance, So when it comes to fault tolerance, here, what do you mean by fault tolerance, guys? It is always what happens if it is failed, correct? So this is for high availability. That means if a cluster fails, what happens? Correct. So what it does in the container instances, any containers which is running, it will recreate it. What it does is, it rapidly recreate it by orchestrator for another cluster node. See, one cluster goes, no problem. It will create another node. But when it comes to your virtual machines, what is the fault tolerance here? VMs can fail over to another server in the cluster. Server in the cluster. So these are the difference between your virtual machine and your containers. But when it comes to containers, it's very, very, very easy. So this is container images. That means I have, let's say, there is something called as container registry. This is ACR. So instead of keeping images in the storage or anywhere, what we do is we use a container registry to store the images. See, in the real-time environment, we keep this as a private. Why? Because if I have public access for the container registry, take an example. Anybody can go modify that images. So that's why we keep it always container registry in a private. And what we do, using the container registry, we can create a ACA container instance, container applications, container Kubernetes services, and container instances. See, my subscription can build and push the images to the ACR. I'll store the images in the applications in the ACR, and I'll pull the images whenever I require, either to create a container applications, or I can create a Kubernetes application, or I can create a container instances. So container images is a lightweight, standalone, executable package of software that encapsulates everything needed to run an application. Simple, right? So this is what happens the moment you have container instances. What happens here? You need to have a virtual network. It will take a virtual network. It will have container host. This host will be taken care by Microsoft. So what do? You create a container. On top of that, you will install something called as Nginx as a web server. Anything you can install. Like I have given example of this. You can bring any application, guys. This is just an example I've given, right? If you want web servers, if you want any what kind of web server you want, like Ubuntu Nginx, you want Bitnami chats or Redash. So whatever you want, right? If you want an API management, right? So you can just search anything images, right? That's what it happens. And the moment I get an Nginx port 80, and I'll get a public IP address. The moment I go to the browser, I'll get Nginx page. This will be a faster way to run a container without provisioning your virtual machines. Correct? So it has a PaaS. It is a platform as services for sure, right? And it will be very fast startup. That means you can start a container in a seconds without provisioning your virtual machines, right? And it has a public connectivity. Yes, it will give you a public connectivity. That means it is directly exposed to internet, right? Isolation features. It has a isolation features. You might have seen that, right? It's take a portion of your OS, right? And you can use a custom sizes. That means there's something called as nodes. That's called container nodes, right? Can be sized dynamically to match actual resources, right? See, for example, you will select a hardware. So you might have seen in our app services, we have used hardware, right? Same thing here, you can select the hardware. You can customize the sizes. And definitely you can mount your Azure file shares. That's called your persistent storage. You can mount your Azure files. It will work for your Linux and Windows containers. That means you can schedule for both either Linux or Windows, right? So when you're creating your container instances, it will ask for where your container wants to integrate. You want OS of Linux or in the backend. This is all backend. If I select Windows, it will be on the Windows platform. And you can have co-scheduled groups. That means it will support your container instance supports scheduling of multiple co-scheduled groups. You can host your host machines, and you can integrate with your virtual network also. The moment you're creating your container, it can be deployed into your specific to a virtual network. You can select your virtual network as well. So the moment I create, the top level is always ACI, right? So what is this ACI? This is container instances where you select your container instances, and collection of containers can schedule on the same host. Containers nothing but your apps. Containers are groups like your resources, local network, your share volumes, right? So the moment I implement my container groups will have a container instances, and you'll pull the images, then you'll have your front end, right? It is very lightweight, guys. You'll see that the moment you go here, you'll select your subscription. Guys, are you using free trial? Anyone apart from Sneha? Sneha is doing labs, very good. You guys are doing the lab environment? Are you guys practicing? So when I come across container instances, just select your container instances. I'm going to create a container instances. I'm going to keep it in my subscription, or I'll go and create here. So in order to create any instances, you need to have resource group. So let's say my container instances, new. So where you want deployed, it has a availability zone. Can you see this? It is on the preview. What is the preview, guys? It was not available earlier. If single node fails, and it will try to get the in other nodes, but here there's no chances of fail because it has a zone concept now, right? And here you can have the quick images. For example, somehow if I go for a container instances where my container registry, if I keep the images in the registry file, or I can go back to quick images. Quick images, this will go to the quick images and it will pull the images. Or you can say another container instances. See here, be aware that Docker Hub has recently introduced a pull rate limit on Docker images. When specifying an image from the Docker Hub registry, this may impact the creation of your content. So earlier it was, you can pull any images, but here it has a limitation now, right? It has a limitation now. So they have just pull request. It has some limitation. So before you do, just do that. See, earlier we used to go and just pull the images. For example, I want to pull the image as Nginx. It was working good, but now they have a restriction here. So the moment I want to pull the Nginx from the other registry, which goes to the Docker Hub, right? And what is the OS you want to install? So on top of my Linux, I need a Docker Nginx, and it should pull from Docker Hub. So I want to select a hardware here. What kind of hardware you want to select? How many CPU you want? Maximum you can have 4, right? Maximum memory you can have 16. And if you want a GPU, right? If it is a graphic rendering application, then you can go for V100 here. I'm going to select a default size. And networking, you can have your own network, right? Public or private, and you can have your container inside. So every application you'll have an insight. Configure monitoring option for your container instances. You can monitor this. So that we will see in our monitoring section. Advanced. So on restart policy, that means a fault tolerance, right? On failure, always, never. So this you can select it. And when it comes to your key management. So this is like where you have seen this, guys, key management.
Key
Key
pair.
vault. Key vault.
Yes, correct.
Okay, but where you have seen this? Key vault we have not spoken. Key vault is I've given an idea, but where we have seen this? Come on.
Key pair something was there. I can't recall.
So in storage, what you guys get? Keys. Two keys you get, key 1 and key 2. What does that mean? That is nothing but your Microsoft managed keys. But if my customer wants to bring their own key, they will keep it in the key vault. Right. But when it comes to management, Microsoft managed keys, this is what important things, guys. Microsoft managed keys, where I can use when it comes to storage. So if I don't want to use my own keys, what I do, I will keep that from the access keys. So Microsoft gives you two keys. One is this, another one is this. So this is nothing but your Microsoft managed keys. If I lose this, if I compromise this key too, anybody can go, because if you lost your key, home key, if I get it, if I know your address, I can come and enter your house. That is called key, right? Don't forget, guys, and create. So it may not create now Nginx, but I just want to show because some limitation is there now. Let's see. Create. The container instance is just a lightweight. You can see here only you have images. What is the OS type? Select the hardware. Backend, it will create a node, right? It will create a node, and availability zones is coming up. See here, underline hardware. What is this, guys? So here, target subscription is yes.
Everything seems okay.
It has a limitation here. That's why it is not creating. I'm going to use the unique again. So I'll go for same quick images. Public, you want private. Public is you'll create a public IP address. In real time, we will use private, right? Going to create. If I have certain limitation on the hardware, if I have some limitation on the quota, it will not create. In the real time, it should not, because you will have a steady quota, right? So the moment I deploy this, what I have to get, guys? I have something called as some quick images should get. So usually what we do in the real time is not part of our course, but here we keep that in a container registry, Azure container registry. We always keep the images on container registry. What happens, guys? Container registry. Sorry. We always keep the images in the container registry. What it does, It allows you to build, store, and manage container images and artifacts in the private registry for all the types of container deployments. Azure Container Registry with your existing container deployments, development and deployments. It can be used as a pipeline, right? So whenever you require, you will make always as a private when it comes to network. For example, my container ACR Neo. So I have a plan, premium plan. So if I go for a premium plan, you can see public, private. So this is always recommended is what? You keep a private endpoint connections. It is limited to your environment only. Do not keep it in public. If you keep in public, you're exposing your main door to public. Anybody can come to your home, right? So what we do, we lock it, right? We keep it in private. We lock always our door. Whenever something required, we will open the door, right? So always keep it in the private mode, right? The moment I create a container instances here, so I get this link. The moment I click this link, what it comes? It gives you a welcome to the container instance. It's very lightweight, not like your Kubernetes. So there is one more service called a container apps. You might have seen here. Container instances have been implemented. There's something called as container apps. This is equivalent to your Kubernetes. So that means container images, what it does is container apps, it manages the container. Container is nothing but your applications, guys. So alternative to your Kubernetes service, if you want to manage the container orchestration, we use container apps. So container apps environment creates a secure boundary around the apps and jobs, right? Container app runtime manages the environment, OS, upgrade, scaling, versioning, and failover. You can see all the images, we keep it in the container registry, and you can create your like this. You can have your inside container apps environment. You can use it as a you can equivalent to your Kubernetes, right? And you can pull the reports to your log analytics workspace, or you can monitor the insight for your Azure Monitor. That also you can do it. But this is completely an orchestration, same like your Kubernetes. And what is the difference between your Kubernetes and container? This is what they've given here. Kubernetes, they removed, guys. It is a standalone service now. That means they have added to the 5-day course, 6-day course. I think something around 40 to 50 hours course, right? So when it comes to comparison, simplifies the deployment and management of microservices-based application by abstracting away the underlying infrastructure. But here, deploying a managed Kubernetes cluster in the Azure by offering the operational overhead. That means in the Azure environment, it's a serverless architecture. You don't require to manage your managed node. That means the primary master node. Master node is controlled by Microsoft in either way, but cluster node will be maintained by us, right? This is a platform as services, offers more control and the customization. Here you can have your load balancer and other stuff in terms of your Kubernetes, but here just a PaaS services where you don't take care of the underlying hardware. This is fully managed by Azure. This is partially managed by Azure in the control plane, right? You can have your own network. You can bring your own network as well. This is HTTP-based auto-scaling and event-driven scaling. But here, horizontal pods auto-scaling and cluster auto-scaling. Pod is nothing but your application. Rapid scaling and simplified management. This is for the use cases. But when it comes to your Kubernetes, complex, long-running applications that require full Kubernetes features. So where I can integrate? I can integrate with my logic apps, function app, event-driven for event grid. This is all the developer-related integration. See, I can use the container apps to integrate with this sub-services called Azure Logic Apps, Function Apps, Event-Driven, Event Grid. This is all event time trigger. This is called time trigger or event driven. This is Azure policy for Kubernetes, monitor, container, defender for Kubernetes, for comprehensive security and governance. When it comes to your integration, how you can integrate Kubernetes, how you can integrate your container apps. So here, this is the module. So when it comes to your module, guys, please go to AZ104 GitHub. When it comes to the practice of modules, so go to this. I'm going to implement that only. For example, container apps. So here, what they've given. Who's that? Container apps. Select for that and create a container app here. So what they mentioned here, the main name is my app. So I'll just go through this only. Let's say, so I will go through same resource group. The container app is my app. And what they have mentioned here, container app environment, create new, select the environment, my environment, and create it. So here you can keep your Docker file or you can bring your own registry. So I'm going to use the T2S. Here, it will create a container app environment. I will just create the same thing as they mentioned. Set environment name to my environment. My environment. Under environment apps, it will be zone redundant. If you want to integrate your zone, use it. Otherwise, it is not required. Don't require. Means it's I availability. Next is container, what they mentioned. So review and create, wait for the deployment, just test and continue. So my apps. See. Nothing, they've given container, ensure that quick images is enabled for setup hello world. Probably image, example is image. So I'll just go for basic source. You can build your own images, right? It is the pricing of your hardware. They're asking for container, or I will use the quick images instead of going for a container. In the quick images, you can say simple hello world, or you can say GPU hello world container. So I can say GPU just for, can you see 56 GB memory it will take. So I just will take, if I go for hello world container, it will take only 5. So let me check this, whether it is creating in my subscription. So the moment I create, it may throw error because it may not support for my subscription, that hardware, but it should support. Let's see. So today, please, after this class, it will not support, guys, I know. So I'll just go for this one. So when it is not supporting, that doesn't mean that we are not implementing. It's not supporting for our subscription hardware. That's it. There is a quota limit for the subscription, right? Make sure that you will know in the real time. The moment you're doing the real time, it should not give an error because you're using a high-end hardware, right? So I've sent a couple of questions to Sneha on the live questions. So what I'll do is I'll send the individual questions to you guys. Keep that questions for your references. I created around 600 questions. So keep this for your references. I sent it to Sneha also. I'll send individual guys, whoever. So I'll not send in the group. That is not part of this, but still I'm going to give you the MCQs I've created for you guys. So use that and I've given an option wise. So don't go for answer directly. See the questions, understand, answer it yourself, then go and see the answer. Right? I've given the answer also, guys. Okay.
Okay.
So let it come up. Yeah, I'll send it to everyone. So the moment it comes up, but this is just an overview, guys. This is just an overview of container apps. Simplify the deployment scaling your containerized application with container apps as a serverless. But when it comes to your container instances, it's very lightweight. But where I can see the nodes, I can see the nodes here, containers. You can see the container is running and you can see container. Underlying hardware is taken care by Microsoft. You don't need required to connect. You can connect as a bash or is a sandbox environment here. You can use the root, but you will not take control of the OS, your operating system, or you will not take control of the hardware because that is maintained by Microsoft. And you have something called as identity. Here we have system assigned and user assigned. So if I use system assigned, that is for, this is out of subject, guys. This is out of box. But if I use system assigned, they are in the preview, they are implementing. So usually when you implement your virtual machine, you have identity, system assigned, and user assigned. So what do you mean by that? System assigned is a restricted for, if for example, if I want to have an identity for only for these instances, then I can use system assigned. But if I want to use a one user assigned for multiple environment, then I can use user assigned. So what this user assigned does is, it will authenticate your cloud services like Azure Key Vault, which are storing your credential in the code. This will be helpful for developers, right? Often developers will see what is the string, what is the key string, and others that keep asking, right? So for identity, without storing the credentials, they don't need to. They go and implement it, right? That is all high level. If I say also, you'll get confused. So when it comes to another level of courses, next level, you can just see. So here, this is the app URL, and this is what my container apps is running with Hello World image. Right? You might have seen this similar to your app services, right? You can have your sample applications, you can leverage your Kuchstart, you can have your sample applications. What is sample applications? You can implement. You can launch your Java Microsoft apps on the container apps, launch your first Java app on your container apps like this. So this is just for your, how you can install the, launch your first Java application in container applications. So run in the container. You can clone the repository. This is what they've mentioned as. Follow the steps to run the pet clinic. I have this already in my GitHub. So what they are saying is you can clone this. Once you clone this, it will come up to your Azure and use it, right? So create a resource group, create a container environment with login into workspace, create a Azure container registry, build a container images and push it to the registry and deploy it, right? Just do this practice, guys. You'll get something, a pet clinic, for example, dog pets, right? You'll get a web application and you can see all the images of pets, information and other stuff. This is available for everyone, right? Deploy a shopping cart or deploy a Orleans cluster to container apps. You can just use this environment. So what I'm going to do this week, I'm going to sit and prepare a very useful links for you guys. And I'm going to send you in the WhatsApp so you can refer that for your future purposes. Okay. I'll give you lots of samples or when it comes to your real-time environment. Okay. So we have something called as data protection. So in this data protection it's very easy when it comes to protection, guys. So we are going to talk about only two here. Configure virtual machine backup and introduction. So when it comes to backup, what do you think about backup, guys? Why we need backup?
In case of data fails, we need a backup plan, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So, but when it comes to Azure, what they say is, okay, you can use your backup, right? As a service, you can take a backup using the backup server. So, for example, I can create a backup. For example, when it comes to your scenario based, so I'm going to give the scenario, then we'll talk about the backup scenario here. So, the first scenario, let's take an example of this is my data protection. It is very good, where if you know this, it will be useful. Data protection. Take an example of when it comes to data protection. Let's take configure files and folders. Let's take an example. This is your on-premises environment. So what happens here? Your company stores critical, complex information on Azure file share. Example, guys, Azure file share. So when I keep, okay, one question is, can Azure file supports for on-premises? That is my question. Will it support, guys? Azure file.
It should support, right?
Okay. How it will support? Guys, come on. So the moment I have my file share, I'll get a scripting. I can go and implement in any OS, Mac OS, Android OS, Windows, Linux, I can mount that, right? So if I want to use file share from Azure to on-premises, what I do? I create a Azure storage, Azure files, then I'll take the script, I'll go and run in my on-premises, right? So the moment I keep my Azure in the Azure files, right? You must ensure, guys, don't get confused. So if I say here, moment I go to the storage account, you have file share. Here, if I create a file share, I can go, for example, here file share is already there. So here, I can connect to my on-premise environment, either Windows, Linux or Mac. Windows, copy the scripting, run this in the PowerShell. It will create a map drive, right? So when you keep the data in the share, in the file share, what happens? Instant delete, instant, whatever happens, it will be instant, right? So now you must ensure whatever the content which you kept it in the file share can be recovered. If there is a data loss or corruptions, this is just a small scenario for you guys. If this scenario comes, what I will do, right? What I have to do, right? I kept my file share in my on-premises by mapping the environment, but still I want to make sure that I want to protect my environment if something data loss, correct? So for this, what you're going to do? For this, you're going to create a backup services. So what do? You must configure backup and restore policies. If something goes wrong, what is the methodology to recover? And these policies, what I'm doing here, that should meet your company's regulatory needs. Company's regulatory needs. This is a scenario based. So if I want to make sure that file share is not only for your storage, it is for everyone. It can be your any industry, anything, right? So when it comes to backup, it's your responsibility to take the backup. So you can use your Azure backup here. So what is Azure backup? How it works? We're going to see that, how you can implement Azure Backup Center. So here, if I talk about this, definitely you'll get confused. Okay. So we'll go in the word. So what is this Azure protection does? So data protection is all about data protection. Is all about backup services on Azure. Now, in order to use the data protection, right? So what you have to do is you have to go with the something called as top level resources. What is the top level resources? That is called recovery service vault. So recovery service vault. What this does is, for any backup requirement in terms of your migration, if you're planning for migration from on-premise to Azure, if you're planning to migrate anywhere, or if you want to take a backup for your on-premises, Azure, and any other cloud provider, so the top level resource you create is RSV. Is for all your backup requirements. That is called your RSV. So RSV is the top level resources, right? So what is this RSV? Is nothing but RSV is, we will call it RSV, guys. Recovery Service Vault. It is nothing but a huge space on cloud that can store any data, right? That means it has no limitations on how much you store it. So when it comes to backup, it is a global service. It is globally replicated. It is globally replicated. Globally replicated. That means your virtual machine can be anywhere. Your application can be anywhere. It means it supports for data backup. It is highly available. Always it is highly available. Very extremely scalable. That means you can bring any data. It is encrypted by end of the day, right? And it is very secure. So once I create my recovery service vault, so this recovery service vault can take a backup regardless where your environment is, right? So your environment may be in the Azure, your environment may be in your GCP, other cloud provider, AWS, your workloads are running in your on-premises, on-prem. Let's say this is my Azure, this is my on-prem environment, this is like AWS or GCP. Here I can have my on-premises. Now here, this all will be connected to my RSV. That's called top level resources on-premise. Now, in the on-premises, definitely you might have heard about the workloads which is running on top of your on-premises. It can be your hypervisor, Hyper-V. You might have heard about that. You might have heard about VMware, right? You might have heard about Citrix, correct? So on-premises, you have your hypervisor, Hyper-V. You have your VMware. That means vSphere or vCenter, right? You might have heard about that. You might have heard about Citrix also, right? Citrix. Have you heard about Citrix, guys?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Citrix. So it's all connected to my on-prem environment, and it is centrally managed by the on-premise environment, right? It is centrally managed in terms of your on-premises. But when it comes to Azure, what it does is it can protect, because we're going to talk about only Azure and on-premises, not the AWS and other stuff. But you can take a backup from there. I've done that also. I've taken a backup from Azure, AWS to Azure, right? So when it comes to your Azure, it can protect very minimal, like it can protect Azure virtual machines. So when I say protection, that means taking a backup, right? So it can take a backup of virtual machines. It can take a backup of Azure file share. It can take a backup of SQL Server in VMs. It can take a backup of SAP HANA, which is in the VM. So Azure protects only this. But when it comes to your on-premises, it will protect n number of environment. So it can protect your files and folders. That's what we are going to configure today. I'm going to install an agent and I'm going to copy the data. Hypervisor, Hyper-V virtual machines, your VMware virtual machines, your Microsoft SQL Server. If I want to take a backup of Microsoft SharePoint, I can take a backup. If I want to take a backup of your Exchange to Azure, definitely it is possible. If I want to take a system state, if I want to take a bare metal, a physical box, I can take a data backup, right? So when it comes to your on-premises, Azure gives you lots of benefits. Lots of benefits. So when it comes to your Azure, it has this connectivity, right? When it comes to your files and folders, when it comes to your Hyper-V, when it comes to your VMware, see, only difference here is if I want to take the backup, so definitely I need to install some agent here. So when it comes to all this, exclusively for, let's say, Hyper-V, your up to here. Okay, let me do one thing. I'm going to keep all this a little bit down. Okay, so when it comes to files and folders, you're going to install something called as Mars agent. Okay, but when it comes to your other, that means what we say, Hyper-V, your VMware, if I want to take all this backup, then I'll use something called as backup server agent. That's called MABS agent. So here Mars agent, here backup server agent. So if I want to take individual files and folders, then I'll go for Mars agent. If I want to take a backup of all this environment, what I'm going to do, I'm going to install a MABS, but that backup server agent, right? unfortunately, I cannot show that environment because we don't have environment of real time, correct? So we want to use only the MARS agent, which is Azure Backup Agent. So the moment you install the agent, what do? You take a backup of your environment. So this is all about the data protection. That means the moment you have your top level resources, something we have called recovery service vault. On top of recovery service vault, it will support for Azure, it will support for other cloud provider, even if it will support for your on-premises. On-premises, it gives you lots of benefits because it supports for Hyper-V, VMware, your Citrix, and other stuff, right? But it is a big services. If you have RSV, for example, one question as an interview questions, okay? So some of the dependencies there when you're moving from one RG to another RG. What is the dependency here? If my backup is running, I cannot move the resources from one RG to another RG. If my firewall is running, I cannot move the one resource to another RC. If my RSV is running, I cannot move the resources from one RG to another RG. So that you should know because some of the dependency on the resource group, right? You may have heard about moving the resource from one resource group to another resource group. You might have seen that, right? Guys, you might have heard about that, right? Are you guys there or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So here you can see I can have my backup services from the on-premises also. I can have in the Azure also. So Azure recently they have used one more service that is on the preview. And Azure Backup, Recovery Point Management, Storage Management, Data Tiering, Resiliency and Availability, your multi-user authentication, multi-factor authentication, right? Policy management, your access control, your monitoring and reporting, all this will be a backup service in the Azure. So it has a vault. Vault stores what? Copies, recovery point, backup files. When I say vault, vault is nothing but your recovery service vault, right? Backup vault and recovery service vault. We are going to see recovery service vault more because it is, you have to implement that. So there are two types of vault here. One is your backup vault and recovery vault. Backup policy defines the data source, storage vault, and backup schedule. So backup center provides a single unified experience. That means this is like your, the moment you select your backup center in your portal, it gives you how many scheduled, what is the backup, right? So it will be like this. If I go back here, backup items, backup items, backup. Backup. You can create a backup vault here. But usually what we do is when you're going for this, it will create something called as what? Recovery service vault only, right? So when it comes to recovery service vault, you have to create a vault here. So the moment I create a vault, for example, I'm going to keep it in the same prod-RSV. So I'm going to, next is, why we need this? Can you tell me, anyone? Redundancy?
Why
Where
we
discuss about redundancy?
I mean, data saved to other geolocation.
So, but where we discuss this?
In
Disaster recovery?
we
No, we discussed about the replication strategy in storage, LRS, ZRS, and GRS. LRS is locally redundant. If my data center goes down, I lose all the data. Zone redundant. It is specific to region. But if region goes down, I lose all the 3 copies. But geo, it is for disaster recovery, cross one, right? So I'm going for that. Encryption. Microsoft managed keys, customer management keys. Customer can create their own key and store it in the key vault. But recommended is by default, I'm going to use that. Vault policy, if you want to enable immutable, what is the immutable, guys? Immutable.
It
that?
increase
copy.
it
It
increase
is
the
a
size if required.
correct. So what it does is, it is once you enable this, nobody can delete it. It will lock for period of time. If I enable this, it will have a retention policy period. I cannot delete the vault. Correct? I cannot make any modification, nothing. Right? Networking, if you want to allow, deny public access, this will be do in the real-time environment. So publicly, I'm just giving that as an option. So once I create a vault, recovery service vault, what I can do in this, it can protect to virtual machines. It can protect to your on-premises. It can protect your AWS or any other cloud provider. So the moment I create a recovery service vault, right? So you have to change some settings, especially who is using pay-as-you-go, right? Because what happens here is you may not able to delete the recovery service vault when you create, because it has some policies. You have to follow that. Otherwise, you'll end up with paying the bill. So make sure that you'll see carefully and do the configuration. Let's see. The moment it comes up, let's see. So it's a big service, guys. Recovery service vault is used for what? To recover your data, to bring your data, to bring your on-premises environment called migrate. You can use the Azure Migrate. Azure Migrate, what it does means the moment you create a project, I'll show you that. So the moment I get into my prod-RSV, so here I can see a backup items. So what and all it can protect? It can protect Azure Virtual Machine. It can protect your backup agent, backup server. Apart from your files and folders, we use backup server. So agent, Mars agent for files and folders. And if I go for replicated items, in case if I want to bring my data, or if I want to migrate from on-prem to Azure, the replicated data will come here, right? And you have a backup policies. Let me go for backup. Okay. So here, I just want to create a virtual machine, small virtual machine. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a virtual machine. So let's say a VM backup server. So this I'm going to show the Azure machine to take the backup. I'm going to go for small machines.
Sir, this vault is not involved for Office 365?
No.
Okay.
See, end of the day, see, Office 365 is not like that. It's like Azure, it supports only limited one, because it will support only for virtual machine that I'm going to show. So I'm going to use this, take a benefit. Let me do that. I'll use the default one. So why I'm doing here, you have option to backup here. For example, when you go to the management, you can enable the backup here. So you can enable the backup here. It shows my product RSV. I'm not going to do here. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to implement from the RSV itself rather than creating here. So you have that option also to associate your machine to RSV directly when you're creating a virtual machine. Like you might have seen load balancer. When we're creating a virtual machine, we can implement our load balancer directly with the help of virtual machine, right? Same thing. Either you go to the RSV and associate your virtual machine, or When you're creating a virtual machine, you can enable the backup and you can associate with your wherever you created a RSV, recovery service vault. So the moment I created RSV, I'll go back here. First thing you have to do is go to a properties. This is just for a lab environment. In real time, we will not do that, guys. But in terms of your lab environment, you have to do this. First is configuration. What kind of configuration? Whether you have selected geo or that you can apply. Since we have selected a IS, so you don't need to. Smart, this is not required. What is required is monitoring settings here. You can enable Azure Monitor alerts for applications. So I'll just show that later when it comes to your here, soft delete. So this is very important, guys. When it comes to soft delete, just uncheck this. Okay. So what is the soft delete does? So if it is enabled, soft delete can help you recover your data after it is deleted. Enable soft delete for cloud workloads, enable soft delete for security. And so the moment you check this, for 14 days, you cannot delete your RSV, right? For example, if I select a days, the moment you select the days, this is the number of days for which deleted data is retained before being permanently deleted. 14 days is free or of cost. However, retention beyond 14 days may occur additional cost. So let's say Sneha has created this and she has mentioned 30 days. And what is the price here? You'll have lots of pricing here, right? I think the pricing they have not given, but it will give you lots of other stuff. So always disable this when you're practicing for your lab environment. Okay. Encryption settings, this is all the default you can keep. You can bring your own key where you can keep it in your key vault. In real time, we use key vault, guys. Now I'll go and add the backup item here. So when I go to get started, I'll go to backup. So when it comes to Azure, it can support for Azure files. It can support for SQL. It can support for SAP ASC Sysbase. That is a new one. It is in the preview. It will support for SQL Server in Azure Virtual Machine. It will support for SAP HANA in the Azure Virtual Machine. It supports for Azure files here. So let me take Azure Virtual Machines. Click on backup. Now here, for any backup, you have to create a policy here. What is the policy here? I'll go for once a day backup up to 5 days operational tier retention. So I'll create a policy here for my machine. Backup policy. So I want to take it daily at 8 a.m. You have to take a backup. And what is the retain instance recovery snapshot? 2 days, or it depends on your value, wherever you want to do it, configure it. I'm going to configure retention of weekly backup. If you want to take a weekly backup, or you want to take a backup at monthly, at Sunday at so and so time, or you want to take a retention of yearly backup point, you can create it. It's all depends on your requirement. Select that policy. And here, you need to add the virtual machine. For example, I've taken this one virtual machine. I'm going to add this. So either you can create during the creation time, you can have it, or you can add it like this. The moment I enable this template or a backup, what it does, it will be configuring for my virtual machine of Azure. So this is I'm doing for Azure, guys, right? So I've created a virtual machine. I've created a RSV. On top of RSV, I just went to the backup and I've selected the Azure platform. Then I selected the virtual machine. Then I mapped my virtual machine and created a policy. So the moment I created a policy, I've associated with my virtual machine. Now the backup is getting enabled on the machine, virtual machine. This is for Azure. I'm not installing any software here, right? Because in the backend, Azure will install the Mars agent only on the backend. But here we don't need to install because that will be taken care by Microsoft. But when it comes to on-premises, it's our duty to install the agents, correct? So let it comes up. Meantime, I'll go back to Recovery Service Vault. I'll go back to backup. I'll just go to my on-premises backup. You can go for Azure Stacks, ACI, or on-premises. So here, I can protect my workloads wherever the workloads running on the on-premises. You can see files, folders. Okay, meantime, I'll go to the protection.
So, Guru, this backup, whatever we take, it will be stored where exactly?
Storage.
Storage, okay.
See, storage only everything, right?
Mhm.
See, now the moment my backup items is configured for virtual machine, it's your duty to run that. You have to run the backup. And what is the retain backup till? I'll select, this is just for lab purpose. I'll select same thing and click OK. So now what is happening? The backup is getting triggered. So make sure that whenever you take the backup, whenever the backup is associated, if you're trying to copy the data from one RG to another RG, it will not support because this is depend on the resource group. Okay. So that's why you have to plan in such a way that name is very important. Do not rethink the name again and again. So why we have to move the resources? Only sometimes the name is wrongly created, or sometimes what we do, I want to move from development to production. That I can do it. But only thing is you have to stop the backup and you can move the data. You can move the resources. If the backup is running, you cannot move the resources. Make sense? So first is initial. It will trigger the backup. You can see the details. So now it is getting backup. Initial backup is it is taking. You can see it triggering the backup. Please monitor progress in backup page. So here backup, now we have already created backup, correct? And you can stop the backup. When you want to delete the machine, right? You cannot delete the resource group directly. If backup is running, you cannot delete. It will not go. So that I will show you. So once it is taking time, it will trigger and so you can see here, one is a virtual machine because we have installed the virtual machine and we have mapped it. But what about the backup agent? We don't have any machines, correct? So what I'm going to do is I'll go for a backup here. I will select my on-premises environment. So which one I want to select? Since Hyper-V, you need to have environment, you need to have a VMware environment. If I go for Hyper-V, I have to prepare an infrastructure. Apart from your files and folders, we are going to install Mars agent. That's called, you might have seen here. Okay, that's called Microsoft Azure Backup Server. That's called MABS. But if I want to take a backup of my files and folders only, then what I'll do, I'll go for files and folders and I'll prepare the environment. Now here, what Azure says is, if you're already using System Center, that means System Center data protection, right? You can use this. Or if I know I'm not using it, I want to use, sorry, this is for Mars agent. So I'm going to use for files and folders, prepare an environment. So I'm going to download the agent. So once I download, this is I'm going to do in my system, guys. So I'm going to install the agent. So I'm installing a recovery service agent in my machine. That's called Microsoft Agent, Mars agent. So I'm installing on my machine where I'm thinking as a on-premises environment, my machine. So here it will ask for where to install. I'll just go for a default one. And I do not want Microsoft Update. I'll install the .NET framework and PowerShell available. If it is required, it will give you to install. It will ask for you to install. So once I install this, I have to ensure that, okay, anybody can go and install, right? But they need to have a credential. That's called Vault credentials. So I need to register my server to your Azure, right? That's what you need to register it. So what I have to do, I have to download a key vault. That means a vault credentials. So once I'm installing, I need to register this machine to Azure environment, right? So I will proceed with the registration. During the registration process, it will ask for what is the vault credentials you have downloaded. So I've downloaded this one, correct? Here, can you see here? My vault name is prod RSV, and where is implemented? It is implemented in the East US, and subscription identify my subscription, right? So I'll generate my own key, and I'm not saving that into the key vault. I will save it in the local machine, let's say at the desktop. Finish. This is my passphrase, which is for my security. I created a passphrase. And now it will get registered to Microsoft Azure. So the first time you have to take an incremental backup. That means full backup. So once you take an incremental backup, one question comes here for you guys as an interview question. I have data in petabytes. What is the best way to move the resources, guys? Come on. I have data in petabytes, or let's say terabytes. But what are the best way to move the resources? Move the data from on-prem to Azure. You got my question?
Yeah.
Tell me. What is that, guys? Tell me fast. So I'll use Azure Data
Data.
Box. So initially what I do, if I'm transferring the data if it is in petabytes, right, or a TB wise, I cannot go with the Azure backup because first time incremental backup, my machine, my internet will go blocking, right? So if I'm transferring 100 TB of data, right? So first time what you do, if it is in petabytes, you will just go, and here when I'm scheduling a backup, I'll show you that option. So when I'm scheduling a backup, which kind of backup you're going to take? Because since we are creating for, we're going for only, let's say I'm going to go for, let me go for, do one thing, guys. Let me go for here. So what I'm going to do, okay, videos only this folder has, no? But I'm going to create. Okay, so here I'm going to use this subscription example. Okay, so it's in the videos. Okay, I'm selecting only this folder, right? And I'm going to click next. So when to take a backup of this particular folder? See, in real time, we do incremental backup, full backup, right? So either you want to do daily, how many times? 3 times. Azure is giving an option. Or a weekly, you want to take a backup. You want to take a backup on Saturday, Sunday, and so time. Once in a week, you want to take a backup. And what is the retention policy you want to take care of the files and folders? This is again depends on your requirement. If it's a monthly retention policy, if it is a weekly or yearly, that is your depend. So I'll leave it for default one. Now here is the challenge. This is what I've asked you guys. If I have initial backup, if I have in terabytes, then I can use transfer using my Azure Data Box. So if I go for next, unable to locate Azure PowerShell, Azure PowerShell required to configure. Okay, Azure PowerShell required. So if you want to do that, what do? You select that and they will give you an option that where to ship your disk. So once they ship, go to your machine, install the agent, then you can transfer all the data and just ship it back. They will do it. And second time onwards, you will take the backup. Simple. Correct? So as of now, I'm transferring the data over the internet. That is limited data. If it is a used data, that is not a suggested one. Your data, your internet will go choke, right? Because there's a lot of traffic in the backend. Correct? So now the backup is taken. Backup is scheduled. Now I'm going to take the backup. So I'll just select the retention. So this is just for, okay, just backup. So now what is happening? It is transferring the data. It is taking a snapshot of your volume and transferring the data to Azure environment. But what I will do, guys, once the backup is done, I'm going to delete the backup. What is that? I'm going to delete the file which I have deleted, which I'm storing in my machine. What I'll do shift and delete. Okay. Then I will recover the data. Let's see. Data transfer completed, all the backup data in the cloud, verifying the data integrity. Close it. Okay, it's completed. Now what I'm going to do, guys, I'll go here. What I'll do, shift and delete. Control Alt Shift delete, permanently deleting this file. Okay, deleted, right? I'm going to recover the data. So whether which server, I'm going to use this server only. It is the primary region, yes. Individual files and folders, yes. And I'll select the C drive only as a to map the drive and just mount it. Up to how many days you want to keep that mount. So I've selected saying so and so date. Now what happens here is it will give you the mount point. It will recover the volume and this will take several minutes. In real time, it will take hours together because you will not delete one file, right? You want to restore multiple files, multiple folders. Guys, questions will be very, very tough. I'm going to ask you very, very tough questions. Please be prepared. Okay. So now I'll just browse it. You see here, users. I have taken only one folder. You can see here, copy. I'll go to files. I'll paste it here. Make sense, guys? Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the recovery. And unmounted. So this is how it does in real time. But when it comes to Azure, you have to see, go to the recovery service vault. And here, backup items. So it has to show one, correct? Why? Because the agent, the moment I click on the agent, this is in my machine. And you can see, this is the my machine. The machine name is Guru. You can see the view details. You can see all this, right? Now, when it comes to migration, when you're migrating your devices, when you're migrating your on-premises device, what happens here is you have something called as backup infrastructure. So here, backup infrastructure, this is backup infrastructure, backup servers. If you have backup server, protected servers, it's all protected. But when it comes to backup infrastructure, why it is going same way? Yeah. So here, when you're migrating, for example, if you're migrating your, let's say, Hyper-V machines, if you're migrating your, let's say, virtual machines, VMware, physical machine, system center, all you can see here. For example, the moment I have my host, I can see the host here, right? I can see the host. So that is related to your advanced level migration, right? So when you're interested, let me know. That is a different migration where I will have my environment. On top of environment, I'm going to install the Hyper-V. On top of Hyper-V Manager, I'm going to install a machine called Windows Server, some machine. I'll keep some data in that machine. So that machine I will bring to Azure as a migrate. So if I go for Azure Migrate example. So Azure Migrate, what it does, it will migrate your databases, your web application, your databases explore. The moment I want to discover, so what I'll do, I will create a project here. Create a project. So what is that, guys? I will create a project. For example, if I'm creating a project, let's say my project. So where is that location you want? And once you create, in the backend, what it does, guys, it will create what? Recovery service vault. So once it creates recovery service vault, from there you have to do the assessment. You have to do the assessment. You have to discover the project. Once you discover, you have to do the assessment and you have to migrate. So the moment you do, you have to discover first, you have to build, you have to analyze, you have to assess it. So once you discover, the moment you click on the discover, what kind of discover you do? You want to do, you want to migrate virtual machine, what are the types? Where do you want to migrate to? I want to migrate to the virtual machine from the on-premises. For example, a physical box, or yes, my machine resides in the Hyper-V. And where the target is, you can select the target, confirm the target, and you need to install the agent in that particular Hyper-V, and it will replicate, and you can migrate your data, migrate your entire data, entire machines. Even you can migrate your databases, migrate your web applications, right? And even you can migrate your data box, where you select, and it will import to Azure, export from Azure, right? So Azure Migrate is a big service, guys. But when it comes to recovery, it will create a project. But you can ask me a question, where is my project, Guru, we created for migrate? That is only when you discover. So when you discover, then only it comes up here. You can see here. The RSP will come the moment you discover the project, the moment you do the assessment. What it does, you'll get here. And when it comes to your recovery, once you're discovered the environment, you'll go to the backup items, replicated items. You will see the discover here. From here, you have to replicate whatever you're going to do, right? That's a big concept when it comes to Azure. So always ensure that whenever I require, for example, this is the machine, I don't want this machine to be part of that. So what I'm going to do, I will go with the backup items. So I cannot delete the RSV directly. It will not delete until unless you disassociate the machine. So in order to disassociate, what I'll do, I'll go to the details and I'm going to go to my machine. I'm going to delete here. So server name is my machine, not anything else. And here, what I'll say, others, I'll mention demo purpose. So, and I'm going to delete that. So deleted successfully. If it is not deleted, what happens, guys? You cannot delete the RSV. Can you see here? This is deleted. And the moment I refresh, what happens? It comes 0, correct? And Azure Virtual Machine, again, you have to go to stop the backup. What is that? Stop the backup. You cannot delete directly in the Azure. You have to stop the backup. So delete the backup. So what is the backup? That's called VM backup. And I can say others. Stop the backup. Whether if you want to move the resources from one RG to another RG, you have to stop the backup. See here, we are deleting the backup. But when you're deleting, you are stopping the backup and deleting. But in real time, you have to stop the backup. That means you go to the view details. You have to stop the backup here. You have an option called stop the backup, correct? And the moment you can see your backup is already done. So what it does now, I'm deleting the backup. Once I delete only, the recovery service vault, the backup items, right? Here what happens? It will give you 0, correct? So when you have a time, guys, I want you guys to do one more thing today. Please go and do this lab. Data protection. So here, recovery salt, all we have created. I want you guys to do this one. This one, the task 5, please do this today.
Okay.
So it is same thing. Recovery service vault you're going to create in other region called West US. And here, review and create. You have to go to your search the machine called so-and-so machine. Backup and recovery. Select the discovery, enable the replication. So this is just to disaster recovery. Just practice this lab for your thing. So you'll understand how the replication strategy works. So here the moment I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah, is there any prerequisite before we, perform this lab?
What is that?
Is there any prerequisite before we perform this lab 10?
No. There is no prerequisite. So it is basically, it is straightforward, right? It is straightforward. If I go back here, first what they say, you have to download the files. Where I get the files? I'll go back to here, download the files. Can you see here? Download the files. Download the files to local machine. See, for example, if I download the files, it will be in the zip file. Okay. It is in the zip folder. Download. So you can see here, then I'll go and extract the file. So once I extract the file, because you have to extract the file, otherwise it will not work when you upload your template. So then here what they've mentioned, all files, labs, what they mentioned here is, first thing is on the data protection, first they mentioned is please go to all files, Azure portal, for example, I'll go and deploy the thing. So I'll go to deploy a custom template and I'll build my own template. So here what they have mentioned, load the file. What is the load the file? It is module lab 10 VM template. So what I do, I'll go back to the load file. I'll go to my machine. I'll go to this folder and lab 10, all files, lab 10. So what they mentioned, which one they mentioned? Edge template, right? Edge template.json. Right? And open, take a minute to review deploying and save the changes and edit the parameters, load the template. Save it, edit the parameters and load the file, correct?
Correct.
So I'll just load the file, save it. Make sense? So here I'll select the resource group. Now here admin password, because you need to have a admin password. If it is a development machine, I can't use the same password for production. So I'll select password and review and create. That's what they mentioned. So once you region East to West, provide the complex password, review and create it. Right? Just review and create. So once you're creating, what it is happening now, you have to think, okay, what is the template I've, what is the error? So DS Suite is currently not available. Okay,
Maybe we need to change that, huh?
change the template. So what I do, edit the parameters. Here, select the, let's say, what I'll do is, I'll go to the virtual machine. I'll go to the same. So I'll select this same machine.
DC Mondays.
Make sense?
Hmm.
And save it. I'm going to put it down. Review and create. So if it is not supporting, select the hardware, whatever it is supporting for your thing. Create. That's it. Make sense? So once you do this, the second step what they have given, they asked you to create a recovery service vault. So name the vault and create it. And third, they've asked you to enable the backup, which we have done, right? And fourth one only, you have to create, monitor the backup. This is just monitor your backup, that we're going to see that. And once you have that, you will enable this as a fifth step, you have to enable this. So what you do, you search for the recovery service vault, create a recovery service vault in a different region, right? You'll create a different region and enable the replication strategy. So we will do that if in case. Okay, the selected virtual machine is also not supporting. Is a problem with the subscription. I don't have a thing, right? So,
But if we can create a virtual machine with the same that image, what is that standard hardware? So why can't we create that vault?
no, that is happening. Some issue is there with the quota. See here, every as quota limit, right? So that's why I'm going to delete that. See, if this is a subscription related quota, right? If the quota is over for that particular region, I cannot do that. Right. So, but I can implement in other location. For example, I'll deploy the same. I'll load that. Let me use my one more subscription. So first we've enabled template, right?
Mm.
Saved it. And again, parameters. I've loaded the file called parameters. Okay, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to select my another subscription. Here, alert policy. Okay. So here, the other problem is it is blocking the policy. So I have implemented policy, if you remember, right?
Correct.
What I'll do, I'll go to the policy.
Yes.
Instead of allow virtual machine size. So what I'm going to do, instead of deleting it, deletion will take 15 minutes again. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select what is that machine? DS2, standard DS2, right? DS-V3, DS2, DS2, V3. So I can copy this. Right? Save it. Usually it will take 5 to 10 minutes to take effect, but it's okay. Next. It will take some time. But here what I'll do is in the list of B, right? So what I'll do, I'll just, instead of that DS2, so I'll go with B1. All you have to know that, okay, this is what I'm going to do, what I have to do, right? So select the sizes. And let B2S. So I've already added B2, DS2, V2, right? But it takes time, 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm just creating with the help of one more machine, which I've allowed already policy, right? But I want to do one thing. I will delete the policy because if I'm doing the other codes, right, it will always time consuming, right? So I'm going to delete it. I'm going to delete this also. I'll delete this also. Okay. Here it will create. Okay, it will create. So I want you guys to practice this so that you'll get an idea. See, it is not so rocket science, right? It is like they have asked us to do this. We are doing it. Follow the steps. Each steps plays a major role. Once you practice, once you know, then you will go and just see this is what the created. It's getting created, right? Now what they have mentioned is the second step, what they mentioned. First, we created a template, edited, everything is done here. Now they're asking us to create same thing. So what is that they're asking, guys? They're asking us to create recovery service vault, correct? So once I just go to recovery service vault, I'll just go to name, resource group, and vault name is vault name. So I'll use this. See, I've created my resource group name, my own resource group name, right? And what they mentioned, east to west, create it and create. So they're not asking anything else to do it. So they're asking directly to create, correct? They're not asking us to review and create it. And when it comes, go to the deployment, go to resources, properties, update the backup. What we have done, guys, we have done directly a GRS, if you remember. On the redundancy strategy, I've selected GRS. They are asking us to create and go to the backup items and select the storage type as GRS. Make sense?
Mm.
So because why we have to enable GRS? Why we have to enable GRS? That gives you cross restoration if you want to do the disaster recovery, right? You have to use GRS, geo redundant strategy, that is for DR. Local redundant storage, that is for region specific, data center specific. Zone redundant storage, that is region specific. But if I want to go outside the region for disaster recovery, then I'll use
Geo.
ERS. Make sense? Let it create. So this machine is running absolutely fine. Now recovery service vault. You can see here, anyhow we have two, so I don't need to. It's okay, East US and this is two different subscription. That's fine. So I'll go to this particular subscription. So they've sorry, RSV, and they asked us to go to the properties. Correct. In the properties, what they mentioned, they've asked monitors cross update, enable cross restoration. I'm going to do that as well. Backup configuration. So here they're asking us to go for a geo redundant, correct? Geo redundant. If I go here, so here they're asking us to go to the backup storage geo. Now this is configured if no existing. Update and security, soft delete security labels on the security enabled. Notice the soft delete retention period on the soft. Note that soft delete. Yeah, that I've mentioned, right?
Yes.
Select enable, cross restoration enable. I'll apply it. So we have selected GRS and it is cross region restoration. So once you enable, then they're asking us to go and you can see that soft delete, you know already. Soft delete, what is the options, right? If I have a retention period of 14, I cannot delete the vault until unless 14 days is over. And next is, you know, this also, how you can configure your backup, where your workloads. So we are going to go for, that is going on, backup. This is what they're asking us to do. So backup, Azure Virtual Machine, backup. So it will ask for what they're asking. Notice that there are two types. Review the select standard. Okay. Standard. Right. And what is the policy name? Create a policy. So policy name is so and so. So I'm going to create the same name, guys, which they're asking us to create the name. And here daily 12 a.m. Daily 12 a.m. Right? And name the location, retain 2 days. Okay. Click OK. And here create a policy. Correct? And they're asking us to add a virtual machine. So this same virtual machine we created with the help of template. I'm associating that machine, protected, and I'm associating that machine, correct? Enable the backup. So they're asking us to enable the backup. Here you can see enable backup. I've selected the virtual machine, enable the backup. So once in the protected items, backup virtual machine entry. So So once it is protected, once it is created, so I have to go with the RSV and I have to go to the backup items, and there I have to see one will be tick mark, correct? That's what they are mentioning here. So once I go back here, recover service fault, I'll go back to here, backup items. It will say one for virtual machine. Still going on, right? Is that easy, guys?
Yeah. By looking at
Yes,
this
sir.
steps.
So may go through the steps. That's it. So go through the steps, each and step, everything is important. Can see this one virtual machine has come in. So now what they are asking us to do, protected items. So on the selected, we have selected in the protected item section, backup items, and select the virtual machine entry. Last backup check. So that means here you can see this is the option, view details, and you can see this is they are asking us to go with this, right? Last backup now. I'm going to ask you backup now, and they're asking us to select the retention period, correct? So restructure period is I'm selecting so and so, just 7, click OK. And it will trigger the backup. Do not wait for a backup to complete, but instead proceed to the next level. So now I monitor Azure backup. Just create a storage account. So they're asking us to create a storage account. So I'm going to create a storage account. Your subscription, resource group, and East2West. So I'm going to select this one, right? So let's say I'll give the same name, guys. To store, to make sure that this is the same. Neo. Let's say okay. So I'm going to go for what they're asking is create. So they're not asking to select any other step. So I'm going to create this environment. So they're asking directly to create a storage account. Why? Why we have to create a storage account? To monitor Azure backup. You'll deploy an Azure storage account, send a logs and metrics to the storage account. That's what they are asking us to create. So select and search for the recovery in the monitor diagnosis settings, add the diagnosis and name the settings. Actually, this I'm going to show in our last module, which is coming up lineup now. So the moment it creates, okay, cool. Here they're not asking us to do anything. I'll go to the recovery service vault. And what they're asking us, this is what I've created, correct? I mean, earlier. And diagnostic settings. Add the diagnostic settings, right? Name the settings, log and metrics to storage, correct? And here what they're asking, please check mark next to the login metrics, Azure backup reporting data. Okay. So what is that? Azure. How many you have to select? Azure backup job data, alert data, job data, alert data, then Azure events and health. Health security, events, health. You can select anything, right? And they're asking us to mark to archive to the storage data. Archive to the storage data. Select the storage data, right? Select the storage data. Save it. Save it. Make sense? Now, in the storage account, deployed, save it, return to the recovery service or monitor blade backup jobs. I have to go back. This is going to save that. So I have to go back to the here, and they're asking us to go to the monitoring blade backup jobs. Monitoring backup jobs. Can you see here? This we have done. Can you see that this is progress? Right? This is to see the progress backup jobs. Correct? Make sense, guys? And
Yeah.
lastly, this I have to enable. So what we have to do in the secondary region, I have to create a new West US. Right? So create and review, then wait for that. Search the virtual machine. So this one, enable virtual machine replication. Create. It is okay. I will just create the same thing instead of new thing, right? So I'm going to create recovery service vault, a new one, correct? And I'm going to create on the same resource group, and I will select the name is RSV so and so region 2, and they're asking us to create in the West US, correct? West US. Make sure that you select a different for the virtual machine. So I will create it, correct? I hope after this, guys, we will do the monitoring. Then we can monitoring is just a small topic. Let's continue, or you want to take a break and continue with that monitoring? It takes just half an hour, guys.
No, but take some break. We'll take some tea or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah. 1 sec. This we will complete it.
So
Okay.
monitoring, it will take just half an hour and it's done or what?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Just give 10 minutes at least break.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's complete this. Let's complete this, and we will take a break.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
yeah.
This VM10. This you have to get this machine, correct? So that's what they are asking us. Review and ensure the validation created. Search for the backup and disaster. So in the backup and disaster recovery blade, select disaster recovery, enable replication. Okay, here, this is like backup items. So here, I will not have that, right? So I will go for site recovery, enable the replication. So first thing, I will go to what they mentioned here. This is a little confusing here, correct? So in the backup and restore, search for virtual machine. So I'll just go for virtual machine, correct? And where is that? Backup and recovery.
Yes.
So backup and disaster recovery,
Disaster recovery.
correct? Disaster recovery. And here, targeted is where? West US.
Sharp here.
So enable start replication, target and advanced settings.
But these labs are really good, VMs and all this. I created, so it was really nice.
Yeah. Yes.
Very, very beautiful explanation, each and every step.
Correct.
Difficult to recall each and everything, but at least we get idea.
Correct. So virtual network, source, resource group, select the plasmati. What they're asking is advanced, made to you. It's important to review the verify and take a default settings. And in the storage settings show, in the storage settings shows normal. So here, Show details, normal. This is just they have given review and start the replication. Correct? So this will take maximum time, okay? And once the replication is completed, you will see search and locate the other region. You may need to refresh and protect items, it will be there. Okay. So this will take lots of time, like maybe 1 hour, 2 hours, it depends, right? And it will come to your, that's what I've mentioned. Please practice it in your lab environment. Okay. So finally, we have it will take time, guys. It will create a target resources. It will take time to create a resource. It is just a copy. It is okay. This is created.
Oh, wow. Too quick.
Go to the resource group. So this is how it is created. The service vault. So I'll just go to the second one. Okay. Refresh and locate that. You may need to refresh. Selected. So this will take time. Here it should come. Replicate. Here it should come. Okay. That's what I mentioned, right? In the region 2, which I have selected. Once the replication is complete, search for the recovery and you need to refresh in the protected items, select the replication items. That's what we have done in the replicated items. It takes time. So all are back. Where is Brijesh?
Attendance, please.
Attendance. I got a message from Meenakshi. Please, attendance, please. Attendance, please.
She is what coordinator or what?
She is a coordinator.
Okay. And so main owner of this new skill is, I guess, Ankha. Is it?
No, I think Pratik is the owner.
Oh, that's why Pratik new skill. Okay.
Yeah. So final model, this is very simple module, how you can configure your monitor.
Mm-hmm.
But monitor comes now, you have to see what I suggest is when you're doing practice now, any module, if you're doing right, there is an option called enable insight, enable application insight. Just enable that all because that is all part of your monitoring, right? So when it comes to monitoring, we're going to talk about how you can configure the monitoring, how you can improve the incident with the alerts. So this I'm going to show one of the alert. Let's say I will power off the VM, right? And I have to make sure that it should alert me, but I should take a automation. Let's say, for example, in the organization, you might have heard about incident reporting. Like, let's say, for example, the moment some incident occurs, if the machine is unexpectedly rebooted, what happens? It will create an alert, correct? And that alert, it will trigger 2 incidents like P1 or P2, SEV 1 or SEV 2. But based on the alert, I want to bring automation because I have to think in another way that if something goes wrong with someone powered off the machine, instead of taking the instead of like getting the alert, but meantime, I have to use someone called automation. I should go with the automation and start the machine immediately. That we can do it. And there is a big boss for monitoring of your on-prem, monitoring of your Azure, monitoring of your cloud, other cloud. There you can see log analytics workspace, right? Is the boss for your on-premises, your cloud, your other cloud. Even you can bring multiple OS, multiple things you can monitor your thing, right? So now, what is monitor according to you? So you'll monitor everything. For example, when it comes to monitoring, you want scenario for monitoring? You know scenario, how you can monitor, right? How you can monitor the environment. So now, when it comes to monitoring, there are capabilities. When it comes to capabilities, it's very important when it comes to Azure capabilities. What exactly Azure does? You have key capabilities. When it comes to key capabilities, it is nothing but your metrics and logs. Always we go with metrics on logs. This is the key things for your backup, or sorry, for your monitoring. So the moment I have a key metric, so I'll go with the metrics. I'll see what is happened in my Azure environment. I have to ensure that who has done what, when it is done, okay, who has implemented, okay, what everything. I have to see the logs here, right? So that is where I'm going to talk about your metrics and logs, and you identify the data types, active log events, and the recap. So we're going to talk about what are the components of your Azure monitoring. So first thing is, I'm going to give you a scenario just to configure, just to scenario, guys. Since I've given for everything scenario, this is also why I have to compromise on this. Configure Azure monitor. So when it comes to monitoring, the key is logging and monitoring. That will be a key of health of your services, right? Because health of your services is very important, right? That is a vital component for your application, right? So that is your services, which is a vital means crucial component, right, of your production applications. So as an administrator, what do you do? As an administrator, Azure admin will determine the causes of failures, right? And try to identify any problems before they occur. So now, as an administrator, he has to determine before something occurs. That's called proactive, correct? So with the help of Azure Monitor is an important tool here to help you in this process. So what it does, it enables you to gather the monitoring, right, and diagnostic information. You might have seen we have provided the diagnostic settings. If you remember in the RSV, we have selected diagnostics and it has to go to the log analytics workspace, if you remember. So all the diagnostic information about the health of your services, right? That means you can visualize the information. You can use this information to visualize and analyze the causes. Of the problems that might occur in your application, right? So if your organization wants to consolidate the log data, then it will be helpful, right? This is the scenario, guys. This is the scenario. And when it comes to your capabilities of your Azure monitor, so the first capability is you want to see the metrics. So here, when it comes to monitor and visualize metrics, what it does is this will be a numerical value that means available on the Azure resources, helping you to understand the health, operation, and performance your system. And you can do the query and analyze the logs. That means logs are active logs, diagnostic logs. We have enabled diagnostic logs if you remember. You can see the active logs, diagnostic logs, and telemetry from monitoring solutions. Analytics queries help you to troubleshoot and visualize that. You can search that. So that means once you search, once you get an alert and action, so what kind of action I'm going to take with the alerts? So I will have the specific alert. I'm going to create the alert. That's a time critical alerts, right? So I'm going to monitor core Azure services. I'm going to collect the metrics and active logs and the diagnostic settings. And I will use the critical alerts and the notification. That's what I'm doing it here, right? So when it comes to your Azure monitoring, so Azure monitoring uses basically two key elements, guys. One is metrics, and another one is logs, right? So this is the two important elements when it comes to metrics. So when you see the data resources can come from anywhere. So here I'm not defining any hierarchy here. If I go at the tenant monitoring, so tenant is what, guys? Azure tenant. That is nothing but your Active Directory or Entra ID, correct? So it will give you lots of other information related to the tenant, right? So if you monitor at the subscription level, so what it does, it gives you the information related to, let's say, how the platform of Azure is working, right? So if I monitor at the resource level, that means it will tell you how the storage account is performing, how your load balancer is performing, how many failures are there, how many scale sets has happened, right? So that gives you an information. And here operating system level monitoring, that means I can make sure that there was an error in the operating system. How is the operating system is going on now? All those things you can see in the monitoring, OS monitoring. And the application level monitoring is something how the code is performing. So all the information is obtained by using metrics and logs. All this information can be obtained by using a metrics and logs, right? And what you can do with these metrics and logs, these particular resources, what you can do, guys, you can create a beautiful insights, right? What you can do, you can create an insight using your application insight, your container insight, your VM insight, your network insight. So whenever you see insight, whenever you're creating this, you might have seen container insight when we are creating, if you remember, one option is their container insights. You can create that, right? And what you can do, you can visualize the data from the metrics by creating a dashboard, workbooks, Power BI, your Grafana. And what you can do with that, you can analyze that data by using Log&Is Workspace. This is the big service I'm going to talk about in the later. You can analyze the data. You can analyze the data with using Metric Explorer or Change Analysis or Log&Is Workspace. Most of the people, they use this, right? Even for on-premises, they'll use for on-prem also, they can use it. And what you do, once you analyze, you can respond to the alert. That means situation. You can respond to the situation. But let's say, for example, this is in the form of, let's say it could be a form of auto scale, it could be form of your virtual machine, it could be, right? So you have to take alerts and actions, or it could be auto scaling. And finally, what you can do is you can integrate the data. You want to push the data to Event Hub, or you can expose to let's say storage account or others, or you can use the logic apps, right? So everything can be done. This is where my Azure monitoring comes in picture, right? So you can achieve all this actually. The first thing what you do, how you'll get all the information, you'll get the information from metrics and logs. So what Azure Monitor is doing here, it is helping me to monitor, right? It is helping me to visualize the metrics. It is helping me to query. It is helping me to configure the alerts. It is helping me to take the actions accordingly. Correct? Right? So when it comes to monitoring and visualization, guys, so the important is metric, right? So this metric can create from any source, from anywhere, right? Again, it is agent based. But for example, if I want to monitor my on premises, what I'll do, I'm going to install the agent. Correct? So let me show that. If I go back to my, it's taking time. Yeah, can you see, guys? Can you see? Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So please practice it. So you can see that enable so it will status as it will go as protected. Then only you can clean up. It is good to practice test the failover to the protected virtual machine. So you can test that to the protected machines. So here you can see a test failover. So this is where we do, for example, when we do a migration, right? So first time what we do, we will do the test failover. Then we will do the failover. Then we will go to the complete of failover. It's happening. So you can just practice that. So first thing, I'll go to the subscription. So what I'll do on the subscription, I'll go to my active log. So logs and metrics are very important, correct? So when it comes to log, you can see all this: who has done, what happened, when it has happened, who has done, when it was created, when it is done, everything it gives you, right? And here the option is last 6 hours, or you can customize that. So when you customize, I can go for October 1st, apply. So up to 3 months, you can visualize the data. So what exactly organization does is they will export the active logs, or they will download the CSV file, because it will not be available more than 3 months. So they will keep it in the storage account or whatever they want the activity. Correct. You can see everything, guys, whatever I've done so far in my subscription. You can see everything you can see. So what is done, who has done, and it gives you everything. You see it? See, get DDoS protection status. 2 weeks ago I've enabled, and it gives you all that. You can download the CSV file also. You can download and keep it in your storage as well. So this is nothing but your logs here. But when it comes to your machine, for example, let's say a virtual machine. So here I have something called as monitoring. So this is nothing but your metrics. How the CPU is doing, what is the availability, or what is the disk bytes, how it is happening, what is happening, right? So what I do in this case, I'll enable the alert here. So to enable the alert, the scenario is very simple, guys. Now, let me take the so let's say scenario is very simple here. I have a VM here. Okay. I have a VM here. Let's say 2 machines are reside here. Now, this is very, very critical machines. Let's say these 2 machines are very critical machines. Now, no one should stop the machine. No one should power off the machine. See, every time I cannot put the lock. Sometimes we need to reboot the server. We need to do all this, right? So accident deletion, that is okay. But here, every time I'm not able to lock it every time, because I need to restart the machine. Correct? So here, what I have to do in this case, first thing is it is a critical machine, as you know. So what I'm going to do, I will create an alert for this. If someone powered off the machine, please make sure that the alert will trigger to my team. Let's say like you have to create an action group here. So the action group is my team. Okay. So my admins, and I'll select a DL that called distribution list where the email will trigger. Correct? Email trigger. And if something happens, for example, nobody's taken the action, if no action from them, if no actions from the team. So what I'm going to do here, I'll bring something called as take action. So I will bring something called as automation runbook. I can bring my function app, Azure function app. I can bring something called as Azure logic apps. I can bring something called as webbook. I can bring something called as webbook. Many are there. So what I'm going to do is, if there is an alert, my automation runbook will see the alert. It will take the action. So the automation runbook as a predefined template, which I have used as a PowerShell. So that means if something goes wrong with that machine, start the VM. Go and start the VM since it is a critical machine. Make sense? So this is kind of, you're taking an alert, you're taking an action, and you're getting a machine ready. Right? Make sense, guys? So this is my metrics and alerts. So metrics are numerical values that describes some aspects of the system at point in time. That means it gives you the health of your machines. They are lightweight, capable of supporting real-time scenarios. The logs, yes, it contains different types of data that is organized in your data's different sets of properties. Events, traces, performance data can be combined to analysis. You can just keep your data and you can give it to log on his workspace for more clarity. And here, how you can describe your active log. So these are active logs, right? Active logs you might have seen, activity logs. Send data to log on institute for advanced search and alerts. So let's say I have active logs, but I want to make sure that those logs will be incorporated with my Login workspace for advanced search and alerts, because Login workspace is a big repository, and there is something called as query. You can query anything, right? We're going to see that. And you can query or manage events in the portal, PowerShell, CLI. You can also do the stream information to the event hub. Event hub is a different concept, guys. Event hub, event grid, and other stuff. You can archive the data to the storage account. You can analyze using your Power BI also. And here, this is our active log. You might have seen, right? Active log in my subscription. It gives you all the detailed information, but this will be stored for 90 days, right? And you can keep it in the download, download the CSV file, keep it in your storage account. Now, this is what I'm going to do this. Let's say, if I go back to first, what I'll do, guys, I'll go to automation. Okay. Automation runbook. So I'll use one of the automation. Here, this is, I'm going to do.
Wanted to say exactly from scratch how alert are created, Guru?
No. First, I'll create an automation first, because alert you cannot create without automation.
Acha.
I'm going to create a automation. So, and ensure that this automation is going to end, let's say, my automation. It's in this, where exactly that machine? That machines are, what I'm going to do, this is the same machine, right? Okay, only one machine. So it's in the East US. I'm going to create in the East US. And system assigned and user assigned, you should know that in the advanced level courses. So when I say system assigned, that is to the specific to the machine. But if I say user assigned, that is for multiple machines. So here public, and I'm going to create this. So when you have a time, just go and learn about user assigned and system assigned, right? Where I don't need to enter the credentials in the code, right? What is that? Why conflict? What conflict here? Resource already exists. Okay.
RG1 or something like that.
Yes. So that means what is happening is, if I go to my subscription, right? If I go to my access control, you can see what is Azure doing is the role assignment. The moment you create something called as automation, they create a service account. Okay. So I'm gonna delete this. Delete this also. See, usually what happens, the moment you create an automation account, so in the backend, Azure will create a service principal and they will name that as they'll give access to as a contributor. My new automation account. Okay. So automation. This, this is how you troubleshoot in real time, correct? So the moment I created, I didn't do any changes, right? And guys, one thing you have to keep in mind, with the retirement of log analytics agent, following dependency server features will retire on so and so. So I'm just using for automation, but in case of, see, usually we were doing update management, that is out of subject here. But here, there is a requirement. The log analytics agent was there, that is retired on so and so. So now what I'm going to do, see, if you want to update your virtual machine, we were using automation account to update, but it is deprecated now. So they're asking to go for other services called Azure Update Manager. Okay. So earlier we used to, if you want to patch your virtual machines, we use a called automation update management. This is update management. Now it is deprecated and you have to use update manager. Okay. So first thing, let's exclude that update management. We are talking about the only automation. So I'm going to create a auto run book here. So first I've created automation run book. Now I'll create VM start. Okay. So I'm going to select, let's say, a graphical. Let's go for a graphical. So I've created a graphical workloads here. So here, the moment I go to the run book, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to browse that. This is like, I can ignore it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to browse the gallery. Okay. So through the gallery, I'm going to import that. So let's say start your VM machine. So here I'm going to select the gallery instead of creating my own PowerShell. You can create own PowerShell means I've created first one that you can create your own VM start new. Okay, I'm going to implement VM start new as a graphical PowerShell. So I'm going to import that whatever available PowerShell instead of creating your own PowerShell commands to use for the automation. So I'm going to use the available one. So now what happens guys here? So the moment I publish this, what Azure does is they're going to assign a publisher a role, right, to my subscription. Okay. Now I'm going to go for virtual machine. I'll go to the same virtual machine and I will go for monitoring. I'll go for create an alert. So I'm going to create an alert. What is the signal here? So signal can be anything. So I will just say that power off, just for example of power off. And you can see how many these devices of since when it is powered off, whatever, you can see that how many, so you can create alert. But here I'm just creating an alert for power off the virtual machine. And I'll go for action. So I'm going to create an action group here. So let's say my administrators, new action group. And I'm going to create a notification. So I'm going to push the SMS to the team as a notification to my team. So I'm going to email it. For example, let's say aws2020@gmail.com. I'm going to send a message. So I'm going to send a message to my mobile. I'll get a message to my mobile. Okay. And I'm going to create it. Now, the notification will be sent to my email address. For example, this 2020, correct? As of now, nothing is there, correct? Email is nothing is there. So the moment I create the action, so what kind of action you want to do? Either you want to take a runbook action, or you want to take a function app, or event app, or ITSM, where the ticket will get raised, logic app, secure webbook, and webbook. So I'm going to use the runbook here. And let's say start VM. So what kind of runbook I have to have? Restart the VM. And I'm going to use my automation runbook here, my new runbook, right? I've created that. And I'm going to validate that. And this will be enabled as a, can see here, the moment I had that, what is that guys? It will add as a virtual machine contributor, right? Without human interference, my contributor is created in the name of start VM on for my automation runbook. And whenever machine is getting powered off, this guy will go. Now what is happening guys? So I've created an action group. And next is detail. Alert name is VM alert. And I'm gonna. So the moment I create this one, what happens, guys? I should get an email, right? I should get an email. And I got a SMS already. I got an already email, guys. Yes, here. Subscription ID, resource group ID, the group. So in real time, we will keep our team DL distribution list, correct? And now let me do one thing. I'll power off this virtual machine. I'll stop means it is powered off only deallocated state. It is deallocated state only.
So if you want to start, it should be restart, right? Start option is not.
No. Wait. So now once it restart means it is not like that. So stop is it deallocated state. Now when the power machine is powered off, so I have given a alert that it has to power on. So first time what you have to do is it is power off now, right? So I'll just go here. You can see here status is powered off, correct?
Yeah.
Now what I'll do, I'll go to the automation runbook. I'll go to my automation. So I have to make sure that I'll go to the runbook for the first time. Since I published it, I have to test it now. So I'll start testing it. So resource group name is what? prod-rg, correct? RG, correct. And then value name is what? Is the machine name. And the subscription name is. So I have to give the subscription ID. And I'm going to click. Now what is happening? As a first time, you have to do the first time here. Okay, first time. First time I'm doing that. You can see it will change now. Refresh. The status will change now. You don't need to do anything. It will take automatically. You can see here. Updating.
Correct.
So updating means it is starting that. So if I refresh here, it is unknown because the status is updating now. Means it is starting the machine.
Does it take time? It should done be quickly, right? Start.
No. It will take time because the machine has to start, right? So the machine has to start. The status will change. Can you see? It's running.
No,
Okay.
no, sorry.
Now, what I'll do is here it gives you a message that this is the output and VM is started automatically. It gives you a message. It gives you a message here.
Okay.
So, but every time I cannot do this, right? So what I'll do, I'll schedule it. So you can see it running. Status is running. So I just made that. The output is, it gives you that my machine, I started and the status is running, right? But I cannot do every time go and manually do that. So what I have to do here, I have to schedule it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to link to schedule. I will add a schedule. So let's say VM start. And every, like, let's say time zone, based on the time zone you selected. So I'll select, let's say, Indian Standard Time. Reoccur every 1 hour. That's the minimum, guys. And you can just create that. So what is the resource group name? prod-rg. See, if I give complete, it should be right. So for example, virtual machine name is so-and-so. Subscription ID is mandatory. Okay. So what is happening now? So it is scheduled one here. It is scheduled jobs. Now I don't need to go and start the machine, nothing, because I've scheduled it. And I don't need every 1 hour it goes, trigger, it will see whether machine is off or on, and it will start it, right? Make sense? Now the moment I go back here, I'll go to the access control where I want to show the role assignment. A contributor, can you see here? This is one, and as a virtual machine contributor, right? This is my automation. You see here? It is given contributor access to this. But tell me one thing, guys. Identity not found. Why it is showing like that? So,
Profile deleted.
yes. So that is deleted. That's why always make sure that you give anything access, give as a group. But for this, you cannot do anything because you cannot create a group and add that automation. No, automation will be created the moment you create a runbook. In the backend, Azure will create an automation account as a virtual machine contributor access, correct? So whenever you delete that, you delete the service account also so that it will not show as a identity not found, correct? Make sense? So 41 rupees is already my cost. Make sense, guys?
Yep.
So alert, Azure resources, you can fire alert and action groups, very important, and take an action. So I've used automation runbook as an action, right? Create alerts, yes. You can create alerts, combine the resource to be monitored, the signal or data from the resources and conditions out of the portal. This is what we have done, action groups, right? So I've used this. I've tried to use. Tried to using this also. A webbook, you can use it. A secure webbook, you can use it. ITSM, I cannot use it because you need to have a monitoring tool called your ticketing tool.
ServiceNow.
Ticketing tool.
Yeah. ServiceNow, like BSN.
Yes, but
Incident.
in the lab environment, they have not given, guys. They have not given those thing, right? In the lab environment, they are given only to how you can create, right? So create an alert, create an action group. We have done that, and trigger an alert. Yes, monitor, configure the alert processing. So this is one alert processing, schedule an alert, and log queries. This is log analytics workspace,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. So please practice your lab, right? Now, last topic of the day and the course of end. So log analytics workspace. This is the big service in Azure. So where log analytics workspace is again, if you want to bring a big repository to the cloud. For example, you have your on-premises logs, you have your AWS logs, you have your system logs, your system logs, event logs, everything you want to bring, right? And you don't see every time we may face a storage problem, right? If you accept that, always we face lots of challenges with the storage, right? So in the on-premises, in the Azure, so to get rid of that particular problem, right? So Login Workspace is a big services, big repository here again. So what it does, whenever you want to make sure that a log is present in your environment, so you want to bring that syslogs or system logs, event logs, those things you can bring it here, right? So the scenario is, I'm going to give the scenario. Configure log analytics workspace. So when it comes to log analytics workspace, so basically what Azure Monitor does that you know already, it will create a log data and stores in the data. So now here, the scenario is very simple. Azure Monitor collects. See guys, one more thing I want to show as a front end. If you go back here, Azure Monitor, okay? Azure Monitor. In the monitor, you can see all this metrics, logs, alerts, everything it goes. What is the alert? Can you see here? Alert, metrics. You can see application inside, a container inside. If any container is there, you can see the container insights here, right? You can see the virtual machines. You can configure the insight for your virtual machines, right? You can see it's already, you can enable it, enable the your insight, right? Again, it will go and put it on the Logonics workspace. That's why I didn't show that. And you can use your storage account to store the logs, application insight. You can see application insight, create an application insight for your applications, right? That provides developers with deep insight into their web application performance, availability, and usages, right? So once you have Logonics workspace, I'm going to create that. Before that, I'm going to give the scenario here. So what this Azure monitoring does here, it collects the data. Collects log data, correct? And it can be stored in the table also. So as an administrator, so you configure the input data source, and then you can conduct what? Queries. So basically, when we say queries provides insight of that, insight into your infrastructure. For example, what? When I say infrastructure, for example, assessing system updates, right? And troubleshooting operational incidents. So in terms of your Logonics workspace, right? So all the query, see, for example, to quickly retrieve the queries, or let's say to quickly retrieve and consolidate data in the repository. So what we do is we use something called as, you will create KQL queries. So you should be aware of this language that's called Kusto query language. Even I don't know about this language. I'm not from developer. But if you want to do the queries, people who knows a Kusto query language, right? They can get the queries. So now I'll just meantime, before we get into an actual topic, what I'm going to do is Logonics workspace is again a big repository. So the top level resources for any log query is Logonics workspace, log analytics workspace. So we call it as LAW, log. So Logonics workspace, again, it is a big repository. big repository on the cloud, where it is capable of handling huge amount of logs. Huge amount of logs. And there is no limit. Same thing like your RSV. There is no limit. Right? But actual price is on the storage, which stores, right? The cost is per GB as per 2018. The cost is per GB, guys. Okay. So the moment you have your repository, let's say my log on this workspace and it has got a repository. Now I can bring the logs from any box of this world, like anything. Let me give it here. It can be a VM installed agent. It can be running in the GCP or AWS. It can be running in your on-prem environment. So everything, what I can do, I can bring those data resources to Azure as a logs. Only logs you can bring it for a monitoring purpose. So here I'm going to use. So let's say this is my a VM agent. It is can be your AWS, GCP, and you can bring your on-prem also. You can bring the storage offline files also here. Storage files, storage log files. Storage will create a logs, right? So for that logs also you can storage logs. So this workspace is a big one, right? So I can bring any logs from anywhere in this world. Even you can bring something called as, you might have heard about SCOM, right? SCOM server, operation management. That also you can collect the logs from multiple operating systems from your on-premise environment that can be pushed to log, correct? You can bring the logs from the storage, let's say a storage account, offline logs are stored. You can bring the logs from the Azure resource. Everything is stored in the repository here. So you have a repository. So all these logs will be stored in the repository, right? So only thing is, for example, the moment the data is stored in this repository, so log will have, what happens? Once the data is stored in the repository, right? Log will have all the information that you need. So what happens here is, whenever there is any slight changes, for example, any ping fail, or let's say the information presented in the form of in the repository, right? So what you have to do is creatively write your queries and get whatever the information you want, right? So let's say I want to find out my data center on-premises replicated last time. You run the query, it will fetch all the information from the repository, digging into the logs. Then you will come to know, okay, it was replicated last night at 12 a.m. Right. So what you'll do, you'll go ahead and create the dashboard using the query, and you can keep it permanently, right? So you'll say that, okay, show me the list of available machine right now. It will show all the list of machines which is available. The only thing is you have to create a DSL language. That means you have to have a push to query language. That's called KS, push to query. KQL language you should know, right? Let's create one by one. First thing is what I'll do, log analytics workspace. So I'm going to create a workspace here. You can see default workspace will be created when you create any services. So always when you're creating a services, make sure that you will associate with that prod-law as a lawsuit here. So I'm going to create this, and pricing is always as per your pay as you go per GB basis. So Logonyx workspace is an agent based again. If I want to bring my on-premises, what I'm going to do, I'm going to install a agent in the on-premises, and I can bring the logs from this COM server. I can bring the logs from multiple operating system. I can bring the logs from the anywhere in this world, right? Only thing is you have to install the agent. So I'll show my machine, which I'm going to install the agent. And once I install the agent, it will give you that information that, okay, how many machines are connected here. So the moment I go back to the prod, here, I can have the virtual machines. I can select the data, the virtual machine, or I can say Windows machine or agent. So I can collect the agent. Let's say what I'll do, I will download to my machine. Okay. So this I'm going to download to the machine. I'm going to install the agent here. If I want to bring your SCOM server, System Center Operations Manager, right? That is called SCOM server. You can bring that as well. Install the agent. So once I have this agent, now I need to have a workspace ID and password. So where I'll enter, I'll go to my control panel in my machine of any machines, and you'll see something called as Microsoft Monitoring Agent. So I'm going to open that, and here I'm going to add that. What is the add here? So I'm going to use it workspace ID. Not this one. I'm going to add here workspace ID, and I'm going to add the password here. And where you're going to use, I'm using at the commercial because it's a commercial. I cannot use it in the US. If you're in US government, you can use the US government or China. Depends on your where the environment. So I'm using a commercial. Apply it. So once I apply, it will check the connection, and it will, what it does, it will enable the option here. You see here? So now my machine is connected to Azure. Let's wait here. So you can see here D0, correct? But the moment the moment it takes time to reconnect, connect to the Logonyx workspace, and here it will give you as 1. So it will take some time, guys. It will take some time. It will show here a 1 machine, right? And I can connect the logs, diagnostic setting. I can connect the logs anywhere. I can add the logs. I can add the logs. You can see here Logonyx workspace. I can add the audit logs. For example, if I go back to my subscription example, let's go to the subscription. Let's go back here to second subscription, sorry, because I'm using it in the other subscription. Now here I can go and let's say events logs. Let me go back here. Let's take an example of Active Directory, Enter ID. So I'll just go to the Entra ID. I'll go to the diagnostic settings. So what I'll do, I'll add the diagnostic settings. So for example, I want sign-in logs and audit logs and risk user risk, everything I want. And I want to make sure that, let's say this is my Entra risk users. And I want to go with my Logonix workspace called prod log. You can see it, prod, and you can archive. You can stream it to event also. If you want to archive to the storage, I can select this is a storage. You can stream to your event hub, send it to the partner solution also, means third party. And I can add the log analysis here. Why? Solution law is already used in the diagnostics. Okay, sync cannot be used. Okay, fine. It's already synced actually. So what happens I have to do here? I will delete this because it's already synced, right? It's already I've been used earlier. So that's why it is syncing here, right? And this now you can see here, risk users, my log. This already I've deleted, right? So I'll just go and delete the because I've already used it in my previous demo, right? That's why it is there. That's why I'm getting a message. So here you can see all this and prod. I've created new one, correct? And it is already. Then you can enable this. That is one thing. And the log analytics, the moment you have your machine, the machine you have prod, here the agent, here the machine, can you see guys? One machine is connected, correct? And here you can run the thing. You can audit, you can run that, you can bit. So just an example of just run the Artbit. Run the Artbit. You can see here. This is the machine, right? 23. This is the machine of my machine, guys. My machine. So if you know the KQL language, you can run the. So I've just run a Heartbeat, and you can see that this is the machine guru. This is my local machine, right? Make sense? So prod is very bigger. You can export, you can do all this. You can bring your storage log files. You can add the storage log files as an endpoint, or you can have your system center, the SCOM server. You can bring your virtual machines. You can link your storage accounts, right? Everything you can do it in one shot, and you can alert, you can manage alerts. Everything is here only, right? So this is a big service again, where you will link it. So this is what logs, monitor logs. You might have seen in the monitor, right? If I go back to the monitor, you can see logs, right? You can see the logs here. You can associate with the logs, prod log. Can you see here? It is already associated. So let's add the scope here. And service that helps you to collect and analyze the data generated by the resources in your cloud or the on-premises environment. Write the logs and interactively analyze your result. Example, including assessment systems, troubleshooting operational incidents, right? And this is what we have created. We created a workspace. And once we created a workspace, we can run the query where it is based on the KQL, right? And this is the Heartbeat, which I have selected the Heartbeat. You can run the Windows event logs, sys logs, agents, custom logs, your alert trails, everything you can do it in system, right? So this is what you are monitoring. And only thing is you should know KQL language. Otherwise, even I don't know KQL language. That's why I just did the Heartbeat. Otherwise, I could have showed in thing, right? Fine. So in the monitoring, you can see monitoring here. You have this. Use the Azure monitoring logs, a virtual machine. In the queries, virtual machine, run the queries, count at bit. Right. So in the resource group, select a scope in the Azure monitor blade. Click on the logs if necessary. I think they've not. This is the one thing with everyone. Okay. So this you can practice it.
Yeah.
So this is how the administration, what we have learned so far. Any questions to be answered?
Right now it's difficult to tell, but
Okay. So first thing is I'm going to remove that because I cannot delete the things. I cannot delete until unless it is there. Okay. So I'm going to disable. Never mind. Other reasons. Click OK. Done. Otherwise, you cannot delete anything here. So if you have a backup is already enabled, you cannot delete as you know that, right? So RSV is very powerful. So can I delete this? I can delete it because I've removed everything like backup I've removed, right? So if you have a soft delete enabled, you cannot delete the things. Okay, guys, anything else? Please provide me your feedback on the group if possible. If you like the training, any changes to be done, or we have taken 1 week extra, guys. So please prepare well, and any doubts you can put it in the chat. But if I am busy, I won't be there next week, guys. I will be traveling. But interview perspective, I'll take 1 hour session for you guys. So when you're free, whenever you guys all 3 or 4, please discuss. And when you want my interaction, I will help you with that. Okay.
so weekday, is it possible for you?
Weekday not possible. No.
Weekday not possible, no?
No, weekday not possible because I'll be in a different trainings. So
Okay, so
weekday after 6, it's fine.
so same time, maybe Saturday, Sunday, any doubts or like
No, that doubts you refer the link, okay? Because my job is done here. Interview is just a my just for my satisfaction, right? So my course is done, and I'm nowhere related to you guys. Any doubts, you can put it in the chat. You can reach me anytime. So fine.
Yeah.
So anything else, guys? We
So
can wind
just
up for the day.
yeah, one request actually. So while designing the questions, like can you design based on the difficulty level, like basic, then moderate, and then advanced. So that I mean will be aware like what we are answering. That is the request.
So see, go through the topics again. Why? Because the questions will be, I'll ask scenario-based questions. Because scenario-based, I cannot create and give it to you. So on the spot, whatever comes in my mind, I'll ask the questions from the module 1 to module 11, from the basic. So if I say, okay, can you describe the concept of hybrid cloud? So I'll ask you questions like that. So what you will do with the hybrid cloud, how exactly you're going to do the hybrid cloud, what exactly you're going to do, right? Hybrid cloud. And when you will use the hybrid cloud, those things I'm going to ask you the real-time scenario, right? So I'll ask you when to use infrastructure as services, when to use your PaaS services, when to use your software as a services, right? So those things are there from the perspective of your data. Okay. So we'll see that because questions I cannot give because I don't know what questions I have to give because this is all interview. We will never keep the questions ready. I never ever did in my life. I'll ask on-spot questions. So whatever coming in my mind, if you are an administration or if you want to become an architect level, so I'm going to ask probing question on the architect level, right? So let's see if I come across any thing, I will definitely help you with that particular topic. Okay.
Okay, and one more thing, probably I'm not sure like if you are answerable to this or not, but about the exams. So, like, whom should we check with
What is that?
regarding the like Azure certification exams? Whom should we check with? Like,
You can
can
check with Neo Skills
okay,
because I'm not related to that, right? So you can check with the Neo Skills. So here, if you see here, I'm getting a message that I cannot delete the soft delete. So what I'll do, I'm gonna disable this. You might have seen that when I'm deleting it, you will not get an option. That's why I've just, now I will delete this. So you might have seen soft delete is enabled. You cannot delete that. So now it is cleaning up. So you can see it. There's a protected. Please stop the backup. Go to the backup items. Stop the backup. I already stopped it. Fresh. So I can restore the VM, but I've deleted everywhere. I cannot create and I'll stop it, undelete. So I have to stop the backup and delete the backup. Okay, so only one I have to delete, and rest I've deleted already. You can see this one because see I'm deleting the individual resources, right? Individual resources, I'm deleting it. Otherwise, you can delete the complete one, but complete one sometimes it will not delete. So individual deletion is always makes sense. Okay, guys, have a wonderful day and make sure that you will practice the labs. You will practice, go according to the GitHub, practice the lab, clean up the resources. Otherwise, you'll end up with your paying the bills. Okay. So this is all by default, it is created. So you should not do like this. That's why you have to associate all the log analytics workspace always when you're creating any services so that it will be a one log analytics workspace for everything. Right.
so these recordings will be like available to us. Like,
No, I'm not sure on this because this thing they will remove if in case if the space is full. So you can check with the Neo Skills
Okay.
because I'm not
No, it
responsible
will be
for.
available. I checked with Angha. It will be available, Guru.
Okay.
Okay.
Because that's why, because every time we don't have complete 24/7, right? So as per time
No,
we tracked it.
say you can ask them today. I have shared in my thing, right? That means I've saved in my desktop because there's no space in the cloud.
Correct,
You
correct.
ask her, Guru saved in his machine, but how to get that into Zoom because I'm not sure how to bring to the Zoom.
So Guru, tell me one thing. Last Saturday, okay, Sunday we got the recording for Zoom. Last Saturday recording,
I've sent the OneDrive, right?
OneDrive is
You can
shared, but
ask
it
them, please ask them that how to associate with the Zoom with the recorded session. Okay, because there is no space. That's why I've recorded in my system. Say, for example, I'll end this call. Example is like this. I'm going to end the recording here. Stop recording.